The flickering fluorescent lights of Hadley's Hope hummed a monotonous tune, a sharp contrast to the growing unease that gnawed at Alan Decker's gut. He was a numbers man, a financial cog in the vast machinery of the colony, not a soldier, not a hero. For only a mere 2 hours, the Xenomorphs had been attacking anything and everyone in the facility. Now they were ripping through the makeshift barricades like a hot knife through butter. It had started subtly. The attack was so swift and silent, almost like it had begun from within. Then came the screams, the blood, the monsters. Decker hadn't seen them clearly at first, only glimpses of chitinous limbs and glistening black bodies moving with a horrifying, unnatural speed. He hadn't needed to see more to understand that whatever was happening, it was beyond anything he could comprehend, let alone face. Fading cries for help, gunshots in the distance. Each sound was a hammer blow against his sanity. He pressed his hands against his ears, trying to shut it out, but the sounds burrowed in, amplified by the claustrophobic space under his bed. He'd seen his lover Annie Miller dead, her face frozen in a silent scream, slumped on the floor of the bar, a gaping hole in her head. The image was seared into his mind. He'd gone to meet with her. When he'd seen her lifeless body and the glimpses of the so-called aliens, he'd ran to his living quarters and hid under his bed. He couldn't stay here. The monsters would surely find him. The silence was deafening. The only sound was the rain padding against the window. He opened his eyes. He couldn't hear or see anything or anyone. He got out from under his bed, his body quivering out of fear. He opened his door and still couldn't see or hear anything or anyone. So he ran through the deserted corridors, past makeshift barricades constructed from overturned desks and discarded equipment. He thought they were pathetic defense. Flimsy defenses against whatever the fuck those things are. Decker saw one such barricade, its plywood splintered and stained crimson, a mangled security guard lying nearby, his face frozen in a silent scream. It was clear, nothing was holding these things back. He found himself next to a small storage room, the air thick with the smell of dust and forgotten supplies. He carefully entered and he was surprised to see a woman. A woman alone, huddled in the corner, her eyes wide with terror. He recognized her as Sarah, one of the colony's botanists. She was young, probably fresh out of university, and now her face was gaunt with fear. "They're everywhere," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what they are, but they're hunting us." Decker could only nod, his throat constricted with fear. He pressed himself against the wall, now shutting and locking the door. The silence was broken only by their ragged. Time seemed to stretch and compress, becoming meaningless in the face of their impending doom. The fluorescent lights loudly humming, in a way it was uncomfortable, even awkward. Sarah decided to crawl under the bed. Decker decided to hide in the closet where the cleaning chemicals were stored. It was cramped, but where else was there? Then they heard it. A loud bang. Then another. The woman, knowing he could see her through the slits in the closet door, mouthed footsteps. Then a hissing sound, getting louder, closer. It was coming from the corridor outside. Decker's breath hitched. He knew what it was, or at least he knew it meant death. It was one of those things. Sarah's eyes watered. She was crying in silence. The door handle rattled. It didn't open. Thankfully, Decker had locked the damn thing. A loud bang, then another, then a final bash. The crunched door creaked open with agonizing slowness. It was now in the room. A xenomorph stood silhouetted in the doorway. It stood 7 feet tall, its elongated skull dripping with saliva, its razor-sharp claws glinting in the dim light. Decker's mind went blank. His carefully constructed facade of normalcy crumbled, revealing the raw, primal fear that lay beneath. He clenched his teeth, and his eyes too were wet. Sarah gasped silently, her body trembling violently. The xenomorph tilted its head, its eyeless gaze seeming to pierce through the darkness and lock onto her. Decker felt a surge of pure, unadulterated panic. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. He could only feel the crushing weight of a possible painful death. The xenomorph took a step forward, its movements fluid and predatory. Sarah whimpered, burying her face in her hands. Decker knew with a sickening certainty that they were doomed. He closed his eyes, waiting for the inevitable. He knew that one of them was going to die, but he didn't want to die. So she's going to have to. In a desperate self-preservation, a primal instinct kicked in. He couldn't just wait for death. He had to do something, anything, to save himself. His eyes darted around the closet, frantically searching for a distraction. His gaze landed on his shoe. It was a stupid, insignificant thing, but in that moment it was the only tool he had. He fumbled for it, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He managed to get it off with a slight struggle in such tight quarters. He told himself he was aiming for the xenomorph, trying to disorient it, to buy them some time. But deep down he knew the truth. He was aiming for anything but the creature, anything to divert its attention, to shift the focus away from him. He hurled the shoe. It sailed through the air, missing the xenomorph by a mile and landing with a soft thud behind it, near a metal bed frame. The shoe tapped against the bed frame. The sound, amplified in the suffocating silence, was like a gunshot. The xenomorph froze, its head snapping around to face the source of the noise. Its attention diverted, but on the terrified woman cowering under the bed. Sarah let out a piercing scream as the xenomorph reached. Its claws gripped her legs, pulling her out from under it. Decker squeezed his eyes shut, unable to watch the horror unfold. He heard her desperate struggles, her choked cries, and then her screams left the room. Was it taking her somewhere? Maybe back to its lair. He waited, his heart pounding in his chest, until he was sure the xenomorph was gone. Then he slowly opened his eyes. The room was empty. Guilt washed over him. He had sacrificed her. He had condemned her to a gruesome death to save his own skin. He was a monster, no better than the creatures that stalked the colony. But the guilt was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming need to survive. He couldn't stay there. He had to find a weapon, find a way to defend himself. He had to get out. He stumbled out of the storage room, his legs weak and trembling. The corridor was deserted, the air thick with the stench of death. He crept forward, his senses on high alert, praying that he wouldn't encounter anything else. His prayers went unanswered. He saw people. Dead people that had put up a fight. Is that why the creatures killed them? Fellow terraformers, security, and even families. All dead. As he rounded a corner, he came face to face with a group of xenomorphs. There were at least 4 of them, their black bodies glistening under the flickering lights, their blank soulless faces were haunting. They turned towards him, their eyeless heads tilting in unison. Decker froze, paralyzed by fear. He knew he couldn't outrun them. He knew he couldn't fight them. He was trapped. Should he just give up? If he fights them, then he's going to die. The xenomorphs surged forward, their movements too fast for the eye to follow. Decker screamed, a primal sound of terror and despair. He turned and ran, but it was too late. They were upon him in an instant. He felt one of their massive hands pin him to the ground, the xenomorph's weight crushing the air from his lungs. He saw one of the xenomorphs approach, its hand twitching menacingly. It raised its arm forward holding something, revealing a grotesque, pulsating smaller creature, its 8 legs twitching, then it launched itself towards him. He struggled, thrashing wildly, but it was no use. The face hugger landed on his face, its leathery legs wrapping around his head, its tendrils probing for an opening. He felt a sharp pain as it forced its proboscis down his throat, injecting its egg deep into his body. He screamed, tried to. But it was muffled. Alan Decker, the cowardly numbers man, was no more. He was now just a vessel, a host for the very horror he had tried so desperately to escape. His cowardice, his selfishness had ultimately led him to this gruesome end. He got what he deserved. The xenomorphs had found a new host and Hadley's hope had claimed another victim.